Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, brought to you by the Draft Professors. Today, the Draft Professors that are joining me are Jake and Marcus, and we're going to talk about 5 wide receivers today. As you know, different people are going through their boards different ways. Marcus is building his board. Jake's board maybe has a few more guys on it right now. So as we're exploring the wide receiver class, we decided to talk about Deion Burks, Antonio Williams, Eric Rivers, Zachariah Branch, and Brennan Thompson. So Deion Burks and Antonio Williams had a little bit of hype coming into the year. If you would have talked to me last year at this time, we were also talking about Antonio Williams and Deion Burks in last year's draft, and they chose to go back to school. Now, Antonio Williams has some injury. Like, if availability is your best ability, his ability isn't that high. I think it's the right way to put it. But, Marcus, what did you see in Antonio Williams when you watched him?
What I saw Antonio Williams is, I saw somebody that definitely is a pure slot guy, right? Definitely a pure slot, somebody that Cade Klubnik really trusts. Definitely, you could see a lot of I would say, tight window throws that, Cade Klubnik was really trying to make would go to Antonio Williams. You really trust him to be in this right spot at the right time. The way Clemson's, offense is set up, you don't see too much him getting some isolation where you really get to see his true route running ability, which is kind of a little bit of my issue. Like, I definitely know he's a great slot. Like, where he can find certain holes in the zone. He definitely makes himself available to the quarterback. Definitely has pretty good hands on himself. I was looking at his drop rate here. Only has 1 drop all year. Right. And, that's a big something that's happening with a lot of the other Clemson receivers is the drop. So it's something that, you really could trust him with. It's just, to me, when you compare him to these other guys, I just don't see like the ultimate explosiveness I see with some of the other guys on this list. Like some of the other guys, I kind of feel like they could become more than just a normal slot receiver. And I felt like with Antonio Williams, if you take him out of the game, he's kind of a little bit easier to take out of the game. He doesn't do too many like reverses and things like that. It's some of these other guys do. So when I watched him, I really felt like that. Yeah, there's some talent there, but I really feel like that it's not something that you're gonna really reach for like day 2 or even. Of course, not even really day 1. I feel like he's more of a day 3 guy when I was watching him. So that was kind of my thoughts on Antonio Williams. But I wanted to see a little bit more from him, just as a route runner. But I really didn't get a chance to see that. But I know that he's a great slot where he's finding things in the holes. And, you know what I'm saying? Like, what I really look for in slot receivers is, can you read the zone? Because, I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I look for when I'm watching a slot is like, because when you're playing a lot of zone coverage in the NFL, I mean, as a slot receiver, you're not going to get a lot of press coverage, right? You're not going to get a lot of that. And, I want to see what he looked like one-on-one in some of those situations. And, you don't see that too much on film just because of the way Clemson plays. But, he does run a lot of the kind of the air raid stuff that you like the white crosses and things like that. He does that pretty well. But, definitely somebody that didn't stand out too much on film. I mean, I thought his game against Duke was a really good game, but that was also because Klubnik was a little bit on fire in that game. So, but Klubnik does trust him maybe a little bit too much, and you kind of see that in some of the stats you see here. But I think that when you look at him overall, I still think that he's a pretty good slot receiver because he's kind of a bigger size guy than these other guys. So you try to figure out like, okay, maybe he can make something happen outside or something like that. But, it's really not something you could really work with too much, in my opinion. But, I think maybe his junior film might be a lot better. I'm not sure. But you can really tell that, Klubnik was forcing the ball to him a lot. You can just even tell by some of his ratings he has here, looking at his passer rating. So, I wasn't too impressed with him on film. But, I definitely somebody that I'm not going to say he's not going to be undrafted. Because I think he's probably going to have, maybe if he has a good offseason, he can, some people really love his junior tape. But, yeah, it wasn't somebody that really stood out to me that much.
And Jake, do you think Antonio Williams could be a featured receiver in an NFL offense if he hits his ceiling?
Would you say features more of like top 2 option is probably what
Yeah.
you're thinking? Maybe I would still probably put him more in the complimentary bucket rather than like a feature player. I don't think we're probably going to sit here a year or two from now and say that like Antonio Williams is like somebody, insert team here is getting the ball on like a 10-12 target volume basis. I think the first time I went, so I was Antonio Williams was interesting because yesterday, with all the snow we got, I feel like I went back over a lot of stuff from him, and I remember going through it the first time, going, man, he just doesn't he's just not fast. He's just not like I don't feel like a sense of urgency, when he runs routes. And then I went back and I went, there's a reason for that. He's playing on time into space, and when they're asking him, to run out routes, when they're asking him, to kind of be some of the trail guy, there's like one where they're almost switch releasing into a double post, and they're not, you don't want him to play at 20 miles an hour because one, he wouldn't be in the right window at the right time, and two, I think the route spacing would be way off. So it feels like to be like I think he can get to some top speed that's a little bit better, but yeah, you're not treating him, I think, as like the explosive playmaker that some of these other guys that we're going to talk about are. But I think he probably is, of this group, probably the second most like on time in the right spot player right now when it comes to just running routes against zone coverage, especially where it just feels like, okay, he's slow playing this for a purpose. It is, this window's going to open exactly when it's supposed to for Klubnik if he's not number one in the progression. And I think like when you watch him, I think he can run everything, right? You see some blaze outs out there that he, there's exceptionally good footwork through the route break. There's enough vertical pressure when he's running quick outs, and he does round them a little bit, but at times, but I think there's times where he doesn't need to be when it's a little bit more of a 5-step drop out versus a 3-step where it's like, okay, I need to be out here quickly. He's extremely tough. I feel like at the catch point, I think he has really good instincts there, really good awareness of the sideline. I think he plays under control when he's going up to get the football. He's really good at the second route game where if Klubnik's, on the move, getting out of the structure, there's a really good one. I think it was against, was it against NC State maybe? I don't remember who it was against, but he's running a crosser, and Klubnik gets flushed, and Williams knows immediately where the space is, and he got vertical down the field quickly, found the space on a second reaction, and it's an easy touchdown. So and it is interesting to see like Clemson's like, okay, we're gonna hand him the ball a few times a game, right? We're gonna he's thrown passes. They're attaching him to the line of scrimmage as a blocker, which I don't think has worked out like spectacularly, but there are times where he does a pretty good job. So to me, that's maybe the most interesting part of this is a team going to be able to see, okay, there's something to work with here as a blocker. Like we can feel like we can get into like this, pseudo 11.5, maybe 12.5 per se, where it's like we already have 2 tight ends out there, but he can add a little bit more as a complementary blocker to get us into the, some looks that are going to really frustrate defenses. So he feels like just somebody who maybe you don't think the ceiling is like tremendously high for a player like this, but this feels like somebody who's going to stick on a roster simply because the routes are good. The fundamentals are really excellent. And, I think this in all phases, I know I didn't really talk about after the catch, but it feels like he is somebody who does a good job squaring and getting downhill, pretty quickly, and occasionally can make the first defender miss, which is good. So it feels like he is like the quintessential, like, oh, this is not super exciting, but the fundamentals are absolutely going to get him into an NFL room, and probably, as long as, the injury history doesn't bite him in the league, he'll stick around for quite some time.
Yeah, and I believe the injuries for Antonio Williams, he missed, this is 2025. I believe he missed a decent portion of 2023. He played most of the games, if not all of them, last year. and then he's missed at least one period of time this season with what you would just consider like nagging soft tissue injuries. I don't know specifically what the injuries were. I don't have them written down, but I would not be the only Bills draft person that had Antonio Williams mock drafted to Buffalo Bills in round 1 during summer scouting in May and June. Right. Like we were saying Antonio Williams round 1, and now, Jake and Marcus are both saying like we're looking at Antonio Williams right now as a day 3 guy. So I'm fascinated with where Antonio Williams ends up, and to kind of see what kind of career he has. So another player who had a lot of hype coming into the season has had a little bit of an injury bug is Deion Burks. Jake, what did you have on Deion Burks from Oklahoma?
Yeah, coming into the season, I think you you did a good job teeing it up. It felt like there was like, okay, this is leap potential going to Oklahoma, to potentially be a primary target for Mateer. Like it felt like, okay, this is where we're gonna see that like massive step forward, because I think there were good things to see at Purdue, especially where you go, okay, you give him space to operate. He's going to break tackles. He's going to eliminate those angles and erase them pretty quickly. Like you think you have a good angle, you don't. And so, okay, what are we going to get this year? And yeah, it just hasn't materialized, unfortunately. And I feel like he is still somebody who's not super detailed right now. I feel like it's, if you want to get him the ball, it still feels like kind of what we've seen before. It's the screens, it's the bang eights, it's the glance routes, all of that, where it feels like, okay, he just has to run, take that little 45-degree cut, and we're, and just let him get off to the races. And yeah, he can make some other plays, like there's some highlight reel stuff, but it feels like, for me at least, the detailed portion of his game, as a route runner, how he sets things up, he feels like he's just kind of relying more on the twitch, the athleticism, rather than the detail at this point. And then also, they have tried to make him a blocker on these screens, and it has not worked at all. So that's a little bit frustrating, because we're talking about these Z slot types, and for some of these guys going to the league, like some of these slot guys, they're asking you to block. Like you need to be a part of, these 11 that are going to help run the football. Like you have to be a part of that. They're not just, there are certain teams especially that are just going to absolutely take you off the board if you're not willing to block or just not doing a good job of it. So to me, it feels like Burks is somebody who we were hoping to see kind of this massive breakout because of all this, athletic potential. And he obviously did it yesterday, right? We saw the screen yesterday. If you watched Oklahoma LSU, of like, yeah, once he's got the ball, it's impressive to watch. It just feels like he, down to down consistency wise, just hasn't quite gotten there yet, and it feels like he needs another year. So
okay. And Marcus, was this your first watch of Antonio Williams and Deion Burks?
Yeah, it was. It was actually my first watching all these guys.
Fantastic.
All right, so yeah, Deion Burke, it just felt like more of a gadget player. I feel like I was watching a gadget guy, like a guy who, you'd have to like do like swing routes to him maybe, and like, kind of move everything around for him. Cause just from a route running perspective, I didn't see like the too much that he seemed kind of stiff to me when he was running routes. Definitely just didn't seem like somebody that would go to the next level and, become a full on starter. It just felt like a pure like gadget guy, right? Who's gonna, maybe you could hand the ball off to him. Maybe you could put him in the backfield and, do some choice routes, maybe some linebackers and things like that. But like as a pure slot in the NFL, it's going to be a little tough for him to be consistent. You'd have to find ways to get him free releases. You'd have to find ways to, different ways to just get him the football. Right. And Oklahoma, they really tried doing that. Mateer is so hit and miss this year. It's he has some ugly throws and things like that. But it felt like everything was, we have to try to get him the football in a certain way. You know, it wasn't like, okay, I can just throw this guy the ball, or this guy's going to run a deep route, or this guy's going to do this, or he's going to do that. It was all like, let's try to find a way to get this guy to football so maybe he can make a play for us, right? And I don't think he was making those plays, right? It really felt really just not like somebody that you would feel like with that kind of size. And you could tell he has some speed too as well. That size and, with that kind of shiftiness and speed, you expect him to be more dominant in the college level. Just because how it's spread out and you can get some of those really open looks and get that have that ability to kind of get them in space where they get those one-on-ones where they're able to make players miss and things like that. But like it even felt at times that he was getting tackled too easy for me at certain times where I was like, okay, like I feel like you should be able to at least make that guy miss. I mean, it's especially in the level that they're playing at, those things should really stand out. Like if you're really that guy in the slot who really that guy gadget player too, you should have some plays that I'm like, wow, that's crazy. And I really never saw that from Deion Burke. I just saw kind of just like a guy that was like that could make things happen maybe every once in a while. The stats he never really did anything stat wise or anything that really stand out. And really, you can kind of see why, Oklahoma has to go to different places to kind of find offense besides Deion Burke. And I think they really expected Burke to be that guy this year, and it just hasn't came to fruition. So I think that's a big part of it for me is that, I was expecting to see more of I guess a dominant player, I guess, just because, I've heard of him and I've heard some buzz about him a little bit, and it just wasn't there. Like it just felt like a guy that was just, that maybe in the NFL you could maybe find some gadget plays to make some room for him, but it's not something that I would be rushing to, run my card into to draft him for.
It felt like the Michigan game was like, okay, we might see something here where it's like, okay, Michigan is deathly afraid of him to run past them. So he's getting the free stuff on those hitch routes, which is good. And then the touchdown was nice, right? Obviously it's a pop pass. And it felt like that was one where it felt like he read everything really nicely in terms of like the leverage and the blocking and how it was set up. But then you kind of watch Texas a little bit and you go, why is he running straight into Anthony Hill, right? Like what was the thought process there? So it just feels like it is just an area where inconsistency kind of just reared its ugly head for the most part this season, where it just felt like, okay, you'd see something really, really good and it's like, okay, we can work with this. Let's keep step up and forward. And again, growth isn't linear, right? He's making the jump from Purdue to the SEC, which, it's different, right?
Yeah.
It's different. Okay. You're not, as much as I'm a Big Ten guy, right? I went to a Big Ten school, but it's different, man. Like you're not necessarily playing like a Maryland defense, sometimes, and I get Iowa's got some good defense. You might play Ohio State or Michigan, but on a week-to-week basis, you're not quite getting that level that the SEC provides on a week-to-week basis. And that I think maybe was a bit of a shock to the system for him. As he went throughout the season, which, again, I think there's still stuff to like, right? If you went back to Purdue and you saw against Michigan, there was a nice rep he had against Sainers still, where it's like, okay, he's working through contact, he's tracking over the shoulder, so it is there. Like there is like true receiver stuff there, not just gadget stuff there with him, but it just feels like we are just maybe on a longer development track for him to get to the point where we go, okay, like we don't have to just feed him the ball, in around the line of scrimmage for him to make plays or just way down the field, right? The ADOT doesn't have to be 0 to -2 or, 35, right? We can maybe, work on the precise footwork, work on, change direction, gear shifting, accel, decel, like all of that. Like it feels like we can get there. It's just, I don't think it's going to be, this season, right? We've pretty much run out of time. I know Oklahoma's going to probably get to the playoff. They're going to at least have one more game. But it just feels like he is still somebody who we need to see more progression before we kind of talk about him as like even I think a top 150 guy at this point.
So do you guys think that you see Deion Burks of Oklahoma and Antonio Williams of Clemson the same way? Is it?
I don't because I think Williams is a little bigger, a little bit of a bigger player. So I think maybe there might be a chance where Williams could find a way to play outside if he gets better. just because he has a little bit of a size. And there's a lot of guys who are his size who play outside right now. So, but with Burks, I just don't see him playing outside at all. So with Williams, like there's kind of the size element there that maybe he could find a way to learn and he could become like a true Z guy. But it just felt like Burks was kind of just felt like a miniature Curtis Samuel at this point. You see how Curtis Samuel is in the NFL.
I like that.
Yeah, he's kind of.
Curtis Samuel on Buffalo has done nothing, and that sounds exactly like what you said about the.
Because Samuel, everybody signs Samuel in free agency, like, oh, here we go, baby, we could use him, and then it just never really works out. So,
I am going to reuse that, Marcus. That was actually really good. Okay, so we have 3 receivers.
Well,
Eric
Rivers. One more thing on
ahead.
Burks, because obviously this isn't technically his first year in the SEC, but obviously he only played 2 SEC games last year. So it didn't really feel like we got, because he played 5 games, and it was, Temple, Houston, Tulane were 3 of those last year. And it felt like he didn't really get the full schedule. So it was almost like a lost season last year, right, in terms of truly playing a full SEC schedule. So that was really unfortunate because he didn't really get the experience of, this is what week to week looks like. And so it felt like this season was that. And I don't know if he might be out of eligibility, right? This is year 5. I don't know if, we'll see. But yeah, it just feels like that was probably the most unfortunate thing for him, is that he missed out on most of 2024 where he couldn't really get reps against competition. So it didn't really shock his system until probably this season, right? He's obviously played Michigan before, so that was something he was maybe a little more familiar with. But yeah, it just felt like he just never. We didn't get the plane off the ground very much. It didn't feel like that was happening.
Okay, and then the last 3 receivers, I know from a little bit of pre-podcast chatter, there will be some differences and similarities, but they were Eric Rivers from Georgia Tech. There was Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State and Zachariah Branch from Georgia. So I want to continue to give the shout out. So Brennan Thompson is a proof that this is how draft professors work, right? We did a game preview for Mississippi State, and somebody said that there is something to this Brennan Thompson guy. He had never been on any player list that anybody mentioned. And then when the wide receiver group did their scouting report on him, they said this is a player that is going to go really early on day 3. But Marcus, out of those 3 players, which one do you like the best?
I mean, you asked me this before the show, and I was thinking about it. I kind of just went off the top of my head, but the more I think about it, it's probably Branch, just because I was just thinking, okay, I liked Rivers more than I thought I was gonna like Rivers. I think was more than my point, but Branch is he's just legit. He runs great routes. He's explosive. You could do all the gadget stuff you do with Deion Burks with him. And I just think he doesn't get featured as much because it was the quickest tape I was able to go through because they run so much 12 personnel at Georgia. I mean, Georgia looks like an NFL team with how much 12 personnel they're running, and you know what I mean. And he's only out there on 3rd down, but when he was out there, man, he made the most of it. I mean, the Florida game, he was just dominant. He was all over the field. You could see that's the game where you have to see everything that he could do, which is the route running. He ran this run route against a linebacker where I was like, yeah, that's exactly how you want to run that route, where you kind of stem inside on him. And then you get him to move inside and come back out and then also make yourself available for the quarterback like a slot receiver. That was that's fantastic, right? If you want a slot receiver in this draft, I mean, he's kind of, I'm not gonna say he's not exactly like Johnson from Oregon last year, but I think that's the type of guy he is, where it's a pure slot guy, right? You probably can't play him outside. Right, you can't move him around a little bit. He's purely in the slot, but you see what Johnson's doing in the NFL, where he's making plays for Tampa Bay already, and I see that from Branch, where that's going to just slowly keep growing, and he's going to get better a lot. He really reminded me of a Jamison Crowder Like, I don't know if you guys remember Jamison Crowder. Just
Yep.
definitely kind of reminded me of that type of player where he was just, he was just always in the right place, right time. He doesn't drop the ball. He blocks really well too. That's one thing that I noticed too, that he's a hell of a blocker. He will block the hell out of you. I mean, Jake was talking about guys in the slot, 11 personnel having to block. That's Branch. Branch is going to block. And I'm sure you can't play at wide receiver at Georgia if you don't block. So he went out there and he was just really impressive to me. Like, he did everything that you want from a slot receiver. And when you get as little snaps as he gets, because it really did shock me how much he was off the field, right? And you go out there and you make the most of it like he does. And, you get targeted like he does when he's out there. You could tell that he's definitely a weapon that, definitely probably could be used more often. Like, if he was with like Oregon or some other team that didn't run as many 12 personnel or didn't, feature some of the tight ends like Georgia does, he would definitely be somebody that would be way more explosive on this team. Like, even, I talk about Eric Rivers a little bit, but I feel like if him and Eric Rivers switch teams, like, Branch would be off the charts, right? I mean, he'd probably be like a 1,200-yard guy or something like that. So, yeah, Branch is definitely somebody that stood out to me a lot. And, it's just, he just does everything you want in a slot receiver. Like, I don't think there's a better pure slot receiver than in the NFL draft. And I wonder where he would go. But, I don't see him getting out like the 4th round. I think somebody's going to really like what he does, especially from the blocking perspective. Right, as like somebody like Sean McVay or somebody like that, they're really gonna like what he can do, because that it can keep them out of having to use 12 personnel or having that big wide receiver in there where he can block like that, the way he blocks.
Okay, so Marcus, if you saw Zachariah Branch go in round 2, do you think that's a little rich, or do you think that that's fair?
I don't know. I feel like just because it depends on what his combine is, because he's gonna be a smaller guy, right? So he's gonna have to have his size match his speed on and match his athleticism, which I think it will. But I think that's gonna determine where he goes. Because to me, he is a day 2 guy, but I could see him going like 4th round, like early 4th round or something like that. Okay. But to me, he is a day 2 guy, just from watching it on the film.
So Jake, between Rivers, Branch, and Thompson, which one did you like the best?
It was tight, I think, between Branch and Thompson. It was very tight between those two. I didn't know who Brennan Thompson was. I had to search the spelling of his first name to figure out who he was. It's just because it's not like a traditional spelling. So that was the first tricky thing, to be like, all right, how's the production looking in these games? I just because we're on Branch, I'll stick there, because I think it's almost, it's pretty much a dead heat almost between those two. Branch, I think there's things that are really good right now, and there are things that some of those things show me that things can get even better going forward. Like, Marcus highlighted it well. He does just catch everything, like low throws, quick reaction to the low throws, right? The ball doesn't really get on him. Like, it doesn't feel like he is panicking when, he's kind of the hot receiver on some of these, and, the ball's out quick and it's on him quick. It doesn't feel like it is. He just feels like that, he's ready with the hands at any time, low throws or not. The play against Texas, where he catches the ball and like he leaping in the air, and when he lands, the acceleration that he plants, because he goes back towards the line of scrimmage to go around 2 guys around the edge, and I'm like, all right, well, there's just not many guys who could do that. I mean, there are certainly guys who will attempt that because everybody thinks they can do that, right? You see it with, Tyreek is excellent at doing this, where it's like he frustrates people to no end of like, why are you not taking the first down when it's there, right? Because he's like, no, I'll make this guy miss. I'll go back to the line of scrimmage. I'll erase an angle, and I'll be off to the races for 20 more. Zay Flowers tries to do that. Oh man, that is so frustrating to watch. Some guys that think that they can kind of just take any angle or just take any path that they want. I feel like Branch might be just the guy who can do that. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to like, okay, why have you done this? He just knows he's faster, and he knows he can make that play happen. I love how he runs out routes. outbreaking routes are so good from him, especially where you get, they get into some of these tighter alignments, some of the 2x2s where he is, just hard dive inside with the stem, and he's moving guys, back towards him to square up. He's attacking the outside leverage so well to win on those out routes. And just the ability to just decelerate, reaccelerate is outrageous with him. And obviously, once he has the ball, it's not fair because I feel like with you see players like this and you go, wow, they're dominating MAC competition, or wow, they're dominating Conference USA. They're just faster. Let's get them up to one of the bigger conferences. No, he's just doing this in the SEC. It doesn't matter. He's just running away from everybody that he's playing with, which is it feels very Percy Harvin like, which I don't think I've said. I'm trying to think back over all the years I've done this, thinking like if I've ever comped anyone to that.
I like the Percy Harvin.
It just feels like he is that dangerous of a player, and I would be up at night, I think, if I were a DC. If Alabama's DC, man, I'm gonna be up all week till 2 a.m. figuring out, all right, what the heck do we do when this guy's on the field? And just sighing relief when Georgia's in 12 because he's not out there. That's just how it feels when you watch him play. I feel like there is some when he runs like the glance stuff, right, and he's running, kind of those stuff over the middle of the field, it doesn't feel like he is, and even with other in-breaking stuff, it doesn't always feel like he is, doing enough in the stem right now where it doesn't feel like I think that's the one thing defenses could probably key in on right now is he doesn't really have a feel for pressing enough vertically when he's running those, where it just feels like he's almost like just barely looking to where he's running on some of those, where it feels like you could close on that. And it felt like that. I forget who it was against. It might have been against Tennessee. There was one that stood out to me where it was like a more intermediate in-breaker, where it felt like on that intermediate in-breaker, at least give me something at the top. Give me the head fake. Give me the jab step. Give me something, because the Tennessee guy didn't move, and he knew he was running the in-breaker. So it feels like the outbreakers are set up well when he dives inside. It doesn't feel like he's setting up some of the in-breakers right now at a high level. But because I've seen it on the outbreakers, which I think a trickier route sometimes for these receivers to run, I feel like he can get there with the in-breaking stuff, and then you obviously can send him on the vertical playing deep. You can send him on the crossers, right? Because he's going to run away from guys. And so I feel like the more he gets, reps and detail with his routes over the middle of the field with those in-breakers, he's going to be even more dangerous. And so that's probably why I would give him the edge over Thompson right now of these five. Where it just feels like you see it with one route, and it feels like, okay, NFL team, we see this too. We see what he's doing on in-breakers. We see he's kind of just running towards the space, right, and not setting things up. But because he's doing that with something else already, we feel like we're confident enough that he has the feel for that. Because you see some of the flashes of like, all right, he's stair-stepping on the crosser a little bit, right? He's getting that pressure, with a couple steps so he can open that up. So it feels like there's stuff there, because with guys like the one thing that worries me with some receivers sometimes is just a lack of recognizing there's a defender when you're playing in the slot. Like Treylon Burks struggled at this, where he would just run to the space and forget that there was a defender he kind of had to play in front of him, right? And that's where passes were getting broken up, and it just feel like he didn't really have the understanding of how to attack, what leverage looked like. It just felt like he was just kind of running around and just making plays. Where Branch now, we've seen that somewhat already, and then you add in the outrageous acceleration that he can play with, both linear and curvilinear, that really makes him dangerous. And yeah, if I'm a team that needs a receiver in this draft, I'm making sure I get him so nobody else can, because I don't want to play against him. I don't want to. I really do not want to play
And
against him.
that Jake, you described my feelings on Tyreek Hill, which was
Yeah, that's
ironically
fair.
the comp for Zachariah Branch when he came out of high school. They were saying he was the next Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I would not want to play this guy.
So
Not
I have a
play against him at
question.
all.
So Eric Rivers and Zachariah Branch have similar size profiles, right? If somebody's just looking at like the box, I believe Branch is 5'10", 180. Rivers is 5'11", 180. Jake, would you describe Rivers and Branch as the same type of wide receiver?
Yeah, probably. I think with Rivers, you see some of these like higher end flashes of like going to get the football in the air and tracking it over the shoulder a little bit more, and then throwing those little rocker steps at the top, where it feels like, okay, we have some of these like high level stuff that we're cooking with. I just wish we would see more of it, because it does feel like there are some reps where he is kind of allowing defenders to come back into the picture. Again, not dissimilar to Branch at times, like I said on the inbreakers. But it does feel like with Rivers, there is sort of this level of like, if we could do this on every snap, he would be talked about a lot more, because it feels like there is just times where it feels like, okay, the vertical pressure is so good, the body language in the stem is so good, and he can play at that speed because of how, not to keep bringing up Zay Flowers. I feel like I've brought him up like 5 times in the last 2 shows we've done. But when Flowers runs the in and out breakers where he doesn't square them and he rounds them, he can do it because he's got that inside foot driving back to the ball, and that is super good. So with Rivers, he can do that if he continues to work on that drive foot and that drive step back to the ball, where it feels like it's not necessarily drifting necessarily that he's doing, but it feels like he is not quite getting back square and on line where I would like him to be on some of these. And it feels like sometimes on the vertical plane, we're not getting in and out quick enough, or we're getting out of that break, and then we're not getting ourselves back to the ball, which is another thing where it's okay at the NFL level, right? There, guys, the hitch route is popular. Everybody knows that it is.
Yeah.
So corners are going to be keyed on that, right? They know, okay, we're looking for the hitch, we're reading the core, reading the hips, all of that. And so when they read that on you, you have to beeline back to the ball. It is a race back to the ball when you get out of that break. And I feel like he does it sometimes and not other times. And I don't know if he feels like he's not number one of the progression, so he's not doing that, or it's just more of like a conditioning thing, or I don't know. But it feels like snap to snap, I would love to see more, because there were like a few reps that almost got me out of my chair watching him do the rocker step on the outbreaker and how efficient it looked. And it was like, oh my goodness, hold on a minute. There's something different here. And so I feel like they're similar a little bit in terms of, the stature and probably the early usage and what routes you want them running early on. I feel like, honestly, the outbreakers were probably my favorite part with Rivers as well. I do feel like Branch gives more as a blocker to this point than Rivers does, and that's where you probably want to see more from him as well. It just feels like Branch is like a one area where it's like he's done it consistently in this area, you just want to see it in the next one. Whereas Rivers, it's like, okay, I see it in all of these areas a little bit, and then I don't. And so that's another thing with the consistency, but I've seen more high-end flashes from him just in terms of like refinement, not just like the highlight reel stuff that people like. There's like refined routes, refined play at the catch point that to me separates him from like Burks. But I just want to see it consistently more. I feel like, I watched Georgia, Clemson, and there was one more, Boston College, where it felt like, okay, and I think the Boston College game productivity wise was really good.
Yeah.
It's just like down to down, I just want to see a little bit more, because I feel like he's got it in him to do it. But again, I think consistency for me. And that's why I was like, when we did the pre-show stuff, and why I was like, okay, Antonio Williams is probably in my top 3. It's just for him, it feels more consistent because I know what he's doing. And like after going back through it, it felt like, okay, he's playing slower because he knows he's in rhythm where the window opens. Where it's like, okay, Rivers has the higher ceiling than Williams, no question about it. Like he can reach things, he can reach areas that Williams cannot reach. It just feels like right now, consistency wise, he is not consistency wise on the level of Antonio Williams, and that's where I think kind of I had that separation because I know we talked to our top three. Branch and Thompson were clearly in there. I probably Williams 3, Rivers 4, and then kind of Burks a little bit, distance wise in the 5th spot. But that's where I feel like Rivers is right now versus somebody like Williams for me, and versus Branch, where it just feels like if we get, and again, I'm not saying 100% of your reps are going to be perfect or anything, but if he gets to a point where he is, we're consistently seeing this, he is going to be somebody you probably want as, a second, third feature in your offense because of how, advanced he has shown to be on certain reps.
Yeah. So Marcus, when you said you liked Rivers more than you thought you would, could you explain that?
Well, probably because I started with watching the Boston College game, so that's why.
That's a good game. That's a good game.
And he was just running past people. And that's the first thing I noticed, that he has speed. He has something that is needed from NFL teams, is that he can win. He can win on the go routes, on the post routes. He was just running past people. But the thing is with Rivers, and I think Jake was kind of getting into this, is just, at times there's nuance in the route running, but at other times there isn't, right? And I think sometimes when you talk about like the comeback routes, is sometimes when you to be a great guy who can, have that speed that he has, where you're really selling it, and that ability to stop, that kind of shows itself when you're kind of running those routes. And that's why I really saw from Rivers is like, sometimes it's just, he doesn't have that ability to just kind of stop on a dime, right? And he doesn't have like that extreme athleticism in his lower half where he can do that, where he can just bend and stop. So it's just like, it's really, really steppy, where it's just like he's taking a lot of steps to turn around and get on those routes. And that's the thing that really stands out with him, is that is can he run a full route tree right now, right? Can you really mix it up where he's running a full route tree, or is he a guy that you have to kind of develop a little bit, and hopefully he can get better at some of those routes? I don't want to compare him to Trey Tucker, but it's just Trey Tucker is somebody that in the NFL, just I've seen him grow, that he was really stiff year one, and he was only could run a couple of routes. But now year 3, I see a lot of growth from him, where he's able to run anything. He's coming back to the football. He's doing all these different things. And I think that's what Eric Rivers has to look at. He has to kind of really get better at some of the nuance of route running, just in other routes, right? Because you're right, Jake. I mean, he has a great rocker step to run an out route, but he can't run a rocker step when on a hitch, and you got to come back. You can't do that. Right. You got hips and come back to the football, and that's not happening for him, right? And because he has some really good contested catches too, which kind of caught me off guard. I think what caught me off guard too is that when Haynes King would like underthrow him, he would still catch it. Right. And, that was a little bit different to me and him and Brennan Thompson. I feel like Thompson has to be open. And I think with Rivers, he didn't automatically have to be open to catch the football. But I think, I still feel like Thompson has a better route tree, though. Like Thompson's just an overall better route runner. I don't get to Thompson yet, but we'll get to there in a second. But that's kind of the thing with Rivers is, I know he could do something really well. I know he can run a post route, probably almost as good as anybody that we're talking about. He's going to run that post route. It's going to be perfectly timed. He's going to set it up really, really well, and he's going to be running past that guy. Especially if you get him lined up on a safety or anything like that, he's going to be running past those guys. But when it comes to just pure, what I would say, like route running overall and knowing the whole route tree, that's where you get to work on him. And you could probably tell, like when he's playing at FIU, he's probably just running past people. He didn't have to do that, right? And then when you get to the ACC and stuff like that, you got to have a little more nuance. You're not going to be as dominant as you were when you were at FIU. But if he could kind of get those routes going and just work on that, his flexibility a little bit, because it can happen. Some of these guys can get better, and of course they're never going to be perfect, but they can get better at those things. He puts the work in, he can become a better receiver. But right now, I know he can do one thing really well, and the NFL, they like those type of players. So
yeah, I wonder with the hitch routes with him, if he is just because some of the way he was played, right, even in the Clemson game, you had guys like Terrell bailing really quickly on him, and then he was, able to kind of take advantage of guys bailing. I wonder with the hitch routes if he, and some of the deep curls even as well, where it felt like, okay, this is clearly cover 3, and the guys are like just getting the heck back there for him, where it feels like sometimes when he runs those, he has so much space where he doesn't feel like he has to come back to it. And then when things tighten up a little bit, he is so used to, I think, teams maybe just giving him that much respect on the vertical stuff, right? Because you mentioned the post routes, which are outrageously good because they give him space. He attacks the blind spot. He's doing a great job with that threatening the corner when he runs the post routes. And maybe he's just not used to like coverage being tighter when he's running some of those hitch and curl routes because when he's so used to running the vertical stuff, he's like, I have all this space to operate. And maybe he's just not recognizing down to down that, sometimes space is going to be a little more constricted on some of this. And so that may be where it's just like, okay, understanding, all right, if you're not seeing him bail, like you got to make sure we're racing back to it. And that's just, again, maybe something quick for him that a coaching staff, a team that's interested is going to identify quickly. And you'd be like, when we do stuff like this, as long as we're racing back to football, you're going to be fine. Because we've seen, you in this area, we've seen these high end things just get, got to eat the vegetables sometimes too, right?
Yeah.
You just got to do some of the, the fundamental stuff as well down to down.
Yeah.
It feels like that could be something that's maybe why we see that a little more from him on some of this stuff working back on the vertical plane, but I don't know.
Okay, and then Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State. There's a lot of people that are beginning to talk about him. Like I said, Draft Professors, we were covering him. He was covered on a game preview in late September. Randall Slifer and Andy covered him on the first wide receiver scouting report show, and he graded really high. Like Randall's like, thank you for bringing him to our attention. Marcus, Brennan Thompson, what did you see? What did you like? What do you think?
The first thing I thought when I pulled up Brennan Thompson film was like, oh, it's this guy that had the 2 touchdowns. Yeah, shoot. That was the first thing I thought.
Yeah.
It's you. Oh, it's you, huh? That's what I'm watching right now. Okay, cool. All right. But yeah, he's explosive as hell. Like that's the first thing. Like he is explosive. Like, oh man, get the game against Florida, man. Oh my God, he was. He could have had 300 yards in that game. I think he missed him like 3 times on some of those throws, right?
Then we might know more coming into this week. We wouldn't have been like, "Who's this?" Yeah, if you see a 300-yard game on the box score, you're like, "Well, I'm watching that guy. What happened?"
Because seriously, he could have. But yeah, he is a great route runner. That's one thing I noticed. I think he's a great route runner. I think he runs mostly every single route pretty well. We're talking about like hitches and with some of these other guys. I think the route tree for him is all there. Especially if you get him in off coverage, I want to see him against press coverage. He's probably like a type of guy I want to see it at like a Senior Bowl or like after, East West Shrine or something like that. One of those guys, because I just want to see what he looks like against press coverage because I didn't get to see it a lot on film, right? But he does have a really good release. And when Florida did try to give him some press, like I liked how sometimes he would step inside every once in a while and then get back outside, just figure out how they're playing him and leverage wise. When Florida did try to press him, but I think Florida thought they could for a couple of minutes and then they were like, no. And then they backed up. But yeah, he has a lot of dominance to him, right? And you talk about his size, and maybe you can move him inside and things like that. And I wonder a little bit with that because it felt like he's an outside receiver, and that's the weird part of watching it. like you're so small, but I feel like you could play outside. But the only thing that would probably I would say why he maybe couldn't play outside too much is because if it was a tight coverage or he was underthrown, it didn't feel like that he could come and make a play on the football right away. That was the only thing that I would say that that kind of worried me. And you can even see it when he's looking at his PFF stats and contested catches. He only has 3 out of 10, so it's only about 30% completion percentage on a contested catch. And you kind of can even see it when, if a Florida cornerback was, especially against Florida, when they would get really close to him, it would just be tough for him just to make that catch in traffic. Like even if he ran a good route, and like let's say the quarterback got to him late or something like that, he just wouldn't be able to kind of bring it in traffic. And out of these guys, he has the worst hands, right? Which is kind of crazy. But he's the best route runner, and he's the most explosive, though, in my opinion. So he's so intriguing. This is an intriguing guy. It really is. Like, I was really intrigued by what he can do. He could be really dominant. And like I said, against ASU, he was dominant in that game too. That's when I was wondering who he was watching the ASU game. Like, I'm like, why can't they stop this guy? I never heard of him. Like, who the hell is this guy? Like, he was going off on them. And, you see the same thing against Florida too. But that's my only thing about him playing outside, is that he played outside of Mississippi State. He didn't play in slot, right? But like sometimes with the contested catches, like, can you play outside though in the NFL? So I mean, they're probably going to move him inside in the NFL. Like, you just don't see it too much on film because he played mostly outside. I mean, these other guys, they're getting moved around a little bit, but they're mostly inside. He was an outside receiver, so it's just super interesting with him, is like, can he become that guy where you could depend on him to make that catch at any point in time to play outside like he did at Mississippi State? Or you have to move him inside where you maybe can get him some better matchups on linebackers, and especially, I don't think a safety can guard him. So if I'm moving him inside, it doesn't matter what route I run. There's no safety that's guarding him, so that's explosiveness is really, I would get to him. It was pretty exciting to watch.
Good. So, Jake, had you seen Brennan Thompson prior to prepping for the podcast?
No.
Okay.
No. But boy, am I glad we put him on the list. Wow.
I love hearing that.
Blown away. First two games I watched, Georgia, Texas. I'm like, all right, he got 2 touchdowns against Texas. Let's see that. 4 for 92 against Georgia. I'm like, all right, well, nope, not many people are doing that. So let's see how that goes. So went to Arizona State, went to the Florida game, of course. The first Arizona State touchdown, I know the second one, he's just, nobody's near him because he's just that much faster and more explosive. I've never seen that. Like, it's rare to see that the level of sustainment he has in the burst off the line of scrimmage. Like, it feels like a Tesla from 0 to 50 at sometimes, where it's like, how the heck is it like 11 steps and he's taken like 10 steps and he's gone already. It feels almost impossible. The first Arizona State touchdown, the one thing some guys do a lot, and they still do it in the league, you see the ball in the air and you stay on the ball. Mm-hmm. Like, your eyes are staying on the ball. What happens? Slow down.
Yep.
Then you're like, oh crap, I have to catch up. On that touchdown, he saw the ball, then he puts his head down to run again. To make sure he's in the right spot. Then he makes the adjustment to track it over his shoulder away from the defender. And I'm just like, okay, this is outstanding. I love receivers who do that. And then, the hitch routes, the curl routes, where it's just like he is in and out 3 steps, no problem. I think the one thing on the vertical plane that is concerning-ish to me is he can not only get pushed, but he can take himself far too close to the sideline at times, where it just feels like the comebacks, the hitches are still really good, but you have really shrunk your window for your QB. And he just has to get better at making sure he doesn't get himself pushed to the sideline too much.
Yeah.
I think that's like the biggest thing for me, where it's otherwise, like, you watch him run post routes, just one little pressure here, see ya. No real speed reduction when he's making those adjustments to his route. And man, when he runs the hitch routes and the ball is on him quick, and this is what's frustrating, because I feel like at the catch point, he could be a force, because I feel like the explosiveness should add to the leaping ability, and then the way that it looks so natural when he's catching the ball on the hitch routes and then just taking off for 2 or 3 steps. I'm like, wow, he's natural. He's plucking the ball out of the air like it's nothing. Just find a way to inch yourself more and more at the catch point to be, a more refined player in that regard, and handling contact more. And
buddy, this is the potential top 2 option in an offense right here.
Yeah.
Like, for sure. This guy, man, he's twitched up. Man, he runs great routes. And, on run plays, he is throwing everything at the Georgia defenders. Like, what if I run this release? What are you going to do? Like, he is giving them so much to think about on top of it. On rundowns, where then the corner's like, oh, man, I don't know what's coming next. But I know if he stacks me, it is over. And that's going to help him, I think, as he gets more refined with the hand fighting portion of his game. One, I think that'll keep him away from the sideline. And two, if that happens, he is going to stack people on like dig routes, and he's going to open that two-way go, and he's going to be able to throw some stuff up at the top. And then I think we're all in trouble defensively, right? So dangerous is a really good word to describe him, because if he takes a step forward in his refinement as a player, whoever's got him, you got him on a rookie contract. Well done, because I think we're going to be talking about this guy a lot. I feel like during the process, he is outstanding.
Were you guys day 2 or day 3 on Brennan Thompson?
Oh, I'm day 2, like all day. Like,
yeah,
because but to be honest, I mean, somebody might fall if this, because let's just keep it real. Like, some of these guys, they might have some draft. They might get to the draft, and he's a good guy. I think a lot of people are going to try to figure out why he didn't work out at Texas, Oklahoma, right? I mean, that's probably going to be the first thing they do in the draft.
Yeah.
Like, what happened there? Like, what happened? Because when I'm watching that, I'm like, man, Oklahoma could really use this guy. You know what I mean?
So true.
Right?
So true.
Right? Especially with Mateer there. Like, it's weird. But, yeah, he's a day 2 guy. But, like, he is one of those guys that maybe, somebody falls in love with him, and he just has a good process. He could just keep moving up. But I think he's day 2. I think he's day 2 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the vibes there, like, there's some like, I think some he's got like Thornton's level of speed where it's just like, oh my gosh. And then you have like some of Addison's level of precision on some of this, where it just looks really easy. Yeah. Man, trying to think who's going to be at the end of round 1, come February, thinking like, do we need someone like this? And
wow. Okay.
Listen,
I was not expecting to hear that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I'm
looking at Jim's shirt right there. Like,
I'm pulling up Tank. I mean, if they're sitting there, man. Like,
okay.
Oh man.
So if you're calling him possibly end of round 1, last week we talked about like Tyson, Casey Concepcion, and a few others.
Yeah.
Do you still have Thompson like a tier behind all those guys? Or is he in that tier? He's just ranked lower in the same tier.
I mean, I know Jake, you have better grades that compiled than me. I had to compile my grades and kind of put them together, but it's just, I don't know. To me, he's just so explosive. It's just so explosive, and he's at a school that the offense really wasn't that great, and he still almost had 1,000 yards. If they play a bowl game, he's gonna hit 1,000 yards, right? And it felt like it was like his first chance to really show his skills, and he just goes off. I think there's just so much potential there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he hasn't even really reached his potential. So that's why it was, because he literally could have 300 yards. If he had that if he caught those 2 passes against Florida, those 2 passes a hit, we're talking about a little different, because it's 250 yards he had in that game.
Man, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the order right now, and I'm sitting here going, man, New England, you want to talk to me in the late 20s, early 30s? I'd be willing to listen there. Tennessee at 33. Yeah. You guys need a lot, but like New Orleans at 37. You want the Shaheed replacement at 37? I'd listen to that. Cleveland, you bypass some. You don't take anyone in round 1, or you're just not able to. At 40, yeah, I'm doing that. No question. I think Ooh, Shaheed might actually be the comp. The more I think about it,
Yeah,
that might
he
actually
he
work.
can track the ball. He can do exactly what you're talking
Yeah.
about, which is
that might be it. That might
Yeah,
be the
so
one.
I'm already beginning to think like we got to go and do the rest of the wide receivers because, like, we haven't talked about Chris Bell from Louisville yet, have we?
No, but
Mhm.
I think he's right with him right now for me. Like those two are right next to each other. And then I think Branch probably a little bit, maybe a half step down from that.
Jake, when was the
Because
last
I'm
time
not
you looked
sure.
at Chris Brazel from Tennessee?
Last time I looked at him, when did Tennessee play? It's probably been a few weeks since I've looked at him, but I know. Let me look at Tennessee's offense.
So Brazel, so there's two players in that round 1-2 tier that I'm hearing, and that's Elijah Surratt of Indiana
Sure.
and Chris Brazel from Tennessee. But these are, and then if we add Brennan Thompson to the list, those three are not the same wide receiver,
yeah.
right? Like Surratt's got some athleticism, or excuse me, Brazel has some athleticism. Surratt is basically getting an Emeka Egbuka comp. He does everything well,
Wow.
but
Okay.
he's not your wide receiver one. And then Brennan Thompson.
Who gave him the Buka comp? That's interesting.
I
I thought the same thing. Jake, like, ooh, that's a.
I wonder. I don't know if is he the best receiver on his team.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch
Surratt the
it.
best receiver on his team.
I gotta go watch
Cooper's
that.
done some real good stuff the last several weeks. Cooper's done some real good stuff. The last time I watched Brazel was the Alabama game, so week 8. So I haven't really seen him since then. I saw the Georgia game, which goodness, you talking about a guy who should have probably had 200 in that one as well.
So I'm dropping some
My
names
goodness.
into the chat that I'm looking at the wide receiver list of players that what's going through my mind is players I want to hear Marcus and Jake discuss relative to Brennan Thompson. You're going to get another USC guy there, Marcus.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Oh yeah. We
No.
not talked about Lane. That's right.
Okay, so I make that comment. So one of the
Lane's
first
interesting.
interactions I had with Marcus is he wanted to do an Arizona State podcast because all of his followers want to hear more about USC because you're in Raiders world.
Yeah.
So sorry, as soon as you made that comment, you got profile. Jacoby Lane. Did we do Chris Bell?
Okay.
But this list is going to be longer because we got like the Ian Strong of the world.
Oh sure. Yeah.
And then we got the Omar Cooper. And we got the Jeremy Bernard. And, okay, Bernard is Alabama. Okay. And then Malachi Fields of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
And I'm looking at the wide receiver list to find out how many other guys came back with a day 2 maybe.
Yeah. It's
Okay. I do have to add a couple more. It's gonna be a bigger list for next week. But I mean,
Might be 2
it would
hours.
be the never-ending
For
story.
2 hours long.
Like I'm like
Could be,
I'm
could
like
be.
we may as well go. It's like this is go big or go home, right?
Okay.
heck yeah.
All right.
Okay. So I am throwing Sincere Brown of Colorado in, and I'm gonna qualify Sincere Brown. I think. Okay, and then we need to do Aaron Anderson. Okay, so here's the Sincere Brown. I'm going to give you the summary of the scouting report that came out on Sincere Brown. And the last time we covered him was about 4 or 5 weeks ago. He's going to be drafted because he's 6'5", 200 whatever pounds, and he's going to run a 4.340.
Whoa.
Okay. We just covered a whole bunch of explosive receivers today. I'm actually going to ask, is it Sincere Brown or Deion Burks?
Okay.
I think he's going to grade closer to where you guys had Burks. Just
Okay.
instinct. But I don't necessarily know how much you guys value explosiveness in your grading or anything like that. You're not going to be able to scout Sincere Brown. His quarterback plays for Colorado.
Yeah, that's fine.
Kind of thing, right? So he doesn't have a lot of stats. But he's 6'5", 200 whatever pounds and runs a 4.340. So that's why he was added to the list. So I've written most of those names down, but I'll drop them into our chat. But
Listen to Sincere Brown. You can find some Campbell film.
Yes, and
He went to Campbell.
actually, like everybody at Colorado was hyped because did you see the Campbell film? I mean, I think he had 1,200 yards receiving at Campbell.
Yeah.
Like Mark, what you said, I think there's some merit to that. But by doing all of those receivers that I just dropped in, I don't think there's a need to do a fourth wide receiver show. We can finish after 3.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
But when we podcast, we don't need to cover all of them.
Okay.
That's just so that you evaluate them, like at Marcus in your case, so that you know, okay, I like this guy more than that guy. I only want to talk about the guys I like. And
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with that, like from a podcast standpoint.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
we don't have to podcast on all those guys, but make sure that you have a reasonable grade to know which of those guys you like the best.
I got you.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, so Marcus, you want to tell everybody about Tape Don't Lie and all of the other Raiders content that you make?
Yeah, so Tape Don't Lie, check us out. Like I said, I do about 4 shows a week at this point. We just did a draft show yesterday, covering Matt did David Bailey, and I did Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard from Oregon, who I really like, definitely a stud. So I did. So check that out for that draft show, and then also join the membership where I got. I did a K Klubnik breakdown of him a game against Duke. So you like when I watched some quarterbacks, did the full game, every single throw. So check that out. And then also, check me out on Twitter at the Mark John NFL, and then check me out for my takes on Twitter and stuff like that. And yeah, we're good.
Cool. And you can see Marcus here every Sunday, 10:30 Eastern.
Yes, sir.
Jake.
Yeah, at Jake NFL Draft is pretty much where you're going to find all the links. YouTube do a lot of film work over there as well. I mean, it is very focused on the receiver position a lot of the time, just because this I feel like is kind of the wheelhouse for me over most other positions. I really enjoy talking about these guys, so probably going to see stuff there. Substack as well. That link is, if you go at Jake NFL Draft on Twitter, you'll find that too. I've cut up some Thompson clips. I might use them. Might write something up this week. Honestly, I was that impressed. I can't believe it. I that was the one name that just had never heard of. I'm like, all right, I've never heard of this guy. Let's go find out what we're doing. And then it turns out we're cooking with gas. So I cannot wait for more discussions about him down the stretch. We talk about all this.
That is what makes me happy about doing this. Like, so if I'm dropping a name, hey, let's make sure we cover him on a podcast, and you're like, yeah, that's worth the watch. That's what gives me the warm fuzzy. But I also want to give a lot of credit to the other draft professors, right? So there's 110 of us, right? And it's difficult at this stage for somebody to have watched and evaluated everybody.
Yeah.
So as people are saying, hey, you got to watch this player, we tend to cover them on podcasts. And then when Marcus and Jake said, hey, we can podcast on Sunday mornings, I'm like, you guys pick the positions and I'll sprinkle in some players I'm hearing about. But a lot of the podcasts, you guys pick the players, and I dropped a couple more in. I would say that today was a podcast where I said, okay, make it these 5. And then once I get a flavor for, okay, you guys were a lot lower on Deion Burks than the last group that covered wide receivers, I have an idea of, okay, I want to hear Sincere Brown or Deion Burks. Who do you like more? Right? That kind of thing. So next week should be a lot of fun. For Marcus, Jake, myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you for tuning in. Enjoy your football Sunday, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow night, everybody. Thank you.